Items 1 through 11 are vote onlys. Items 6 and 8 need to be items that will be taken up tomorrow, May 25th, to be conformed with the Budget Committee. So we won't take a separate vote out. So items 1 through 5, 7, 9 through 10, we will conform to staff recommendations. But I think item 1, Senator Huff is not going to confirm, correct?
If you're going to vote as a group, I would say no on 1 through 5 and 7.
Okay.
And then we do one vote.
Well, except that,
just let it reflect
that I'm a yes on item 1.
Yeah, you're probably a yes on the next.
Okay.
Well, whatever.
Why don't we call the roll on item 1?
Item 1. For item 1, Lou?
Aye.
Huff?
No.
Wright?
Aye.
Okay, so 2-1 vote. Items 2 through 5, I think we're all in concurrence with staff's recommendation, and
I'm a no on those two.
2, 3, 4, 5, and 7 are we're going to confirm with staff's recommendations, and they're all no's. They're all rejects. No? No, they're not. Okay.
Oh, are they not?
Okay. Well, then let's take them individually.
So if we take them individually, we can vote no.
Right. All right. Let's do item 2.
So we want.
Lou?
Reject is no, right?
Yeah, we would say no.
No.
Okay, we're saying no to your rejection.
So you say yes? Okay. All right. I'm sorry. Okay. He's a yes.
Well, your motion would be.
The motion would be reject governor's proposal.
And I would say no.
Okay.
To that motion,
No, wait a minute.
If that makes sense.
No. Staff recommends.
No means yes.
No. Staff recommends the subcommittee reject this trailer bill language. Which is a no vote.
He likes the trailer bill.
He likes the trailer bill language, so you're.
It depends how you phrase the motion.
Okay. Staff recommends that the subcommittee reject this trailer bill language.
Okay.
So the motion would be to reject.
The motion would be to reject.
And I would say no.
Okay. So the motion.
No, it's not.
Because he's saying no.
Yes, he likes
no.
the governor's proposal.
Yes, I like the governor's proposal.
Or you can make a motion, approve the governor's proposal, in which case he would vote yes and you would vote no.
Okay. All right. We'll do it the other way. Item 2. I guess concur with the governor's proposal.
Yes. On the motion to approve the governor's proposal, Lou?
No.
Huff?
Yes.
Wright?
No.
Proposal rejected.
You want to do 3,
Okay.
4, and 5 the same way?
We'll do this 3, 4, and 5 the same way.
Without objection, can you stipulate you did that?
Yeah.
Okay. Right. 3, 4, and 5, and 7?
Yes.
Okay. Then let's go to item 9. Is that correct? Which is federal child care funds. And this is to approve staff's recommendation to approve the increase in federal funds for Stage 3 child care. Page 11, right.
Page 11, item 9. Yes.
Item 9.
Item 9. Lou?
Aye.
Huff?
Aye.
Wright?
Okay. Item 10 is Career Tech Ed carryover funds to approve the staff's recommendation, approve the increase in funds.
Lou?
Aye.
Huff?
Aye.
Wright?
Aye.
And item 11 to approve staff's recommendation for the increase in federal funds for child care quality activities.
Lou?
Aye.
Huff?
Aye.
Wright?
Aye.
Okay, so let's go to then item 12, and we have Camille Babin. I think, from the California Department of Education, LAO, and Department of Finance to talk about these issues. We're not taking notes on it, right?
Well, she thanks for discussion and vote.
Sure. Are we discussing vote?
Yeah, we're good.
Okay. All right. So the issue before us is the governors may revise proposal for funding for the CDE's work with Early Learning Advisory Council. Ms. Maven?
First of all, let me just say that we appreciate staff's recommendation to increase the budget authority to support the California State Advisory Council on Early Education and Care, which is the ELAC committee. As you know from the write-up, this is $2 million over 3 years for supporting the ELAC activities, which generously comes from First Five Commission, who approved this item in April of this year. In the previous committee hearings, Department of Finance had brought up that activities, when they put out their proposal, it was to a lesser amount than we of $118,000 versus what we had originally asked for. And one of the reasons cited was that they believe that the ELAC committee would overlap with California Early Learning Quality Improvement Advisory Committee, which is our state committee, our ELQUIS, and to limit, and this was the reason they stated, to limit the budget authority. While it's true that we are trying to consolidate some of these activities in order to save both time and money, the activities of the committees are very different. CalQuest, it was created to create a quality rating system and look at systems like funding, data, parent and stakeholder involvement, and workforce issues. The goal of the ELAC is to look at the entire early learning system, which includes both access and quality, and to establish, implement, and monitor a plan to improve early learning in our state. So far, in order to meet the deadlines of the federal application for the $10.6 million for ELAC, they will meet 3 times separate and apart from CalQuist. The ELAC will build on CalQuist work, but will also be its own separate and distinct committee. We had laid out for First Five a 3-year budget plan that lays out our funding needs. I have a list of activities here in case you want to know what they would be doing over those next 3 years. The other point to be made is that in both of these, the First Five Commission actually gave us $1 million over 2 years for CalQuist. In both of these would both be separate interagency agreements. CDE can only invoice activities that are related to each of those scopes of work. In each of those interagency agreements. So what we don't spend, so we only invoice for activities related to those separate interagency agreements. What we don't spend stays at First Five. So it's not for those types of things. So part of it, so we think there is separate and distinct work. We know there's a lot of it, and we are asking for the authority to use the money that the First Five Commission generously approved for us to do that work.
Okay, thank you. Department of Finance?
Thank you. Sarah Swan, Department of Finance. We don't disagree that there are distinct activities that the staff will have to conduct for the work of the ELAC. As well as the ELQUIS. There is substantial overlap in the budget year because the ELQUIS Advisory Committee will be finalizing its recommendations. Our issue here is really just a lack of workload justification provided by the department and clearly delineating the activities that would be performed by the staff and how that relates to the 3 additional positions that they are asking authority for, in addition to the 2 limited term positions that are currently authorized. So the administration had proposed in the May revision to provide authority for 1 redirected position in addition to the 2 that are currently funded in the budget year. And I also just want to point out that the LEO recently, as you'll recall, estimated that there are 150 positions the department has currently that were related to categorical programs that were included in the flex item.
Correct. LAO, do you have any comment?
Not really. Again, Rachel Ehlers with the Analyst's Office. Just to point out, again, this isn't general fund supporting these positions. It's money coming from First Five.
First Five. Okay. The staff recommends the subcommittee approve the budget request. Any questions from?
Staff recommends
Augmenting. Okay, as printed on page 14, correct? Mm-hmm. Okay. Yes, sir. Senator Wright?
And go to finance. I don't understand if they got the money from First Five and there's no general fund implementation or implication, why do you care?
Well, it's correct that this would not involve a cost for general fund, but they are requesting authority for 3 additional positions, and when they're already funded for 150 positions currently that are related to the categorical flexibility. So again, this was really an issue related to a workload justification.
Your argument that 3 positions would be general fund, or they would come from the First Five grant?
No, they're requesting that they come from the First Five grant. So we're taking
again. So if it ain't coming out of your pocket, why are you worried about it?
Well, we needed to see the workload justification associated with this particular effort for these activities. So we're still concerned, regardless of the fund source. We still need to be satisfied that those activities would be conducted.
So your concern, I'm still trying to see if I understand. I'm sorry. You're concerned that if they get the grant from First Five, that they won't do anything with the grant, so you'd rather they not get the grant?
No, we did provide some authority, reimbursement authority. So they requested $503,000 in reimbursement authority. We are proposing $118,000 in reimbursement authority based on the information that we provided, that the department provided. We just have not received enough detail to justify the workload related to giving them 3 additional positions. We were satisfied that there was workload sufficient to require 1 redirected position.
The $118,000 was going to be general fund money, or you were going to only let them take $118 of the $503 that they were going to get from
Correct.
First Five?
It's the latter. Yeah, it's the First Five money. Yeah. And we had also proposed that the department submit an expenditure plan because we wanted to see more detail about the activities that would be performed with respect to the ELQUIS versus the ELAC.
I'd move the staff recommendation, Madam Chair.
Any other comment from CDE?
Yeah, I just want to distinguish Sharon Taylor from the Department of Education. I think what Department of Finance is saying, the department provided the committees a listing of all of the positions associated with the categorical flexibility, and that was more in the range of 50 and not 150. And I think Finance's proposal for the 118 was saying, and we have responded saying we defunded some of those positions because we took cuts throughout, a couple of budget iterations. And with the 118, they were saying take one of those unfunded positions and use it for towards the interagency agreement that First Five is willing to give us. I think Finance is now saying why give them additional 3 positions as opposed, because we've got supposedly all these positions. That's a decision you guys can make. But I want to make it very clear that the workload and the distinction, as Camille has said, it's not general fund money. Whether we redirect the position or we get additional positions, the workload is there. We did provide, when we did the BCP, we had a description of the work. We then were asked a couple questions. We provided that, and we weren't asked for any subsequent workload justification. So we did last week, when that came up at the other hearing, we actually put some more information related to that, and we provided it to the staffers. And so we think that it's more than sufficient justification for the workload and how that action is taken, but we need all of the reimbursement authority.
And these would be limited term PYs.
Correct.
Yes.
So if the first 5 money goes away, then the
Right.
positions would evaporate as well.
Right.
So
Correct.
there's no risks to the general. Okay, ma'am, I'd move the staff recommendation, Madam Chair.
Okay. Any questions? Comments? Okay. Call the roll.
Lou?
Aye.
Huff?
No.
Wright?
Aye.
Okay. Item 13, preschool assessment.
Nancy Remley, Department of Education. We were a tad bit confused by this particular proposal because we had understood the interest of the committee was in a preschool evaluation. That's what we had been discussing, something that is very similar to what is currently going on in New Jersey with their apples and apple blossom study, where there would be an evaluation, a pre and post of children in preschool, and then perhaps a longitudinal study of a statistically valid sample. What we see in front of us is a proposal to fund a feasibility study for the data system that's coming out of the Early Learning Quality Improvement System. And of course, we would be very, very interested in that. Our thoughtfulness is the funding source, which is the quality dollars that we have already utilized in funding various projects. So what we might suggest is to look at another funding source for this data system feasibility study, perhaps the Early Learning Advisory Council dollars that the ELAC Council will be applying for. Those are one-time funding over 3 years, and they might be available to fund such a feasibility study, moving California ahead to developing this very important data system.
And we would still be glad to work with staff regarding the preschool, looking at an evaluation, a preschool evaluation,
Seems to me they're having a little confusion here. So why don't we hold this item over, and perhaps by the end of when we go through the rest of this discussion can take place, and we can have this clarified before we take a vote on this. Okay? All right, then let's hold this over and go on to item 14, adult education. So,
And one's going to come up and assist you on this item. This item was written by the intern one.
Okay, who wants to start on the LAO? Want to start on adult ed? Give us some background.
Jim Soland, LAO. On item 14, essentially the item under consideration is just a minor technical adjustment of $3 million in one-time carryover funds to support adult education coming out of the Workforce Investment Act. As the agenda notes, this is a piece of funding in a much broader context of adult education and categorical flexibility. As you know, adult education was included in the categorical flex item and subject to certain cuts. And so that's certainly a consideration as you look at this. But in terms of the pure change under consideration, it's primarily technical.
Okay. Department of Finance?
Yes, Ed Hansen, Department of Finance. Yes, the item is very technical, just adding carryover, and there's some other additional money because of the federal grant increase. So it's largely a technical issue, and we request your support.
Okay. It's probably too early to have any kind of research as to how school districts have continued their adult education programs or not continued, to know how many people are involved in the programs or how they've been affected by these, the flexibility and the categoricals. LAO?
We don't have a lot of detailed information at this point, but as part of our survey report that was published recently, we asked a couple of questions related to most categorical funds, one of them being for the 9-10 school year. what is the impact programmatically for something like adult ed? What decisions are you making? And we found that in 25% of the cases, 24% respondents' districts said that the program was being changed in a major way, and another 49% said that the program was being changed in a minor way. So certainly you're witnessing in the field there are some changes being made to the program. Additionally, from a funding perspective, we found that 71% of the districts we surveyed were moving funds away from adult education. So among all of the programs that have been included in flexibility, this is certainly one where funds look like they're being redirected to shore up the local district budgets.
Correct. Okay, and I think this flexibility goes to 2013.
Yes.
And I think that maybe it would be appropriate another couple years out, that we take another look at what's going on for adult education and whether or not there's any kind of nexus between community colleges and what they can offer and what the districts offer. Okay. All right. So this is a motion to approve the April letter. Is that correct? Yes. Okay. You want to call the roll?
Lou?
Aye.
Huff?
Aye.
Wright?
Okay. Let's go to item 15, CSAC and Ed Fund detangling.
Senator?
Yes.
Can we go back to
Oh, sure.
13?
All right, let's go back to item 13.
We can do the study. The study is, this is a preschool study, but if we do it out of federal funds, they don't have a problem. They have enough federal funds that they told me.
So that we can do it as recommended?
Yeah, out of federal funds rather than quality improvement.
Okay. All right, we're going to go back to,
Item 13.
I'm glad you all worked it out. Preschool assessment. Staff recommended that these monies come out of federal dollars as opposed to the quality improvement funds, correct?
Yes.
$1 million to do the study. And the study is for preschool.
Yes.
The data system we're looking at would be 0 through 5.
0 through 5,
Yes,
okay.
Our entire early care and education.
Okay. All right.
system.
Pardon me.
Department of Finance.
Thank you. So just real briefly, we're not in a position to support this. It seems premature given that the advisory committee has not yet made its recommendations.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Just a reminder that in developing a data system, California does require a feasibility study first, and this would go to fund that feasibility study to look at a variety of alternatives to build the system based on different concepts that the advisory committee will approve. So what it does will lay out the options for the legislature to look at different ways to build this data system, different resources, and different fundings.
Okay. Senator Wright?
I've got two things. One's relevant and the other isn't. I got to tell you, if I'm in the position where I'm going to be eliminating slots to provide child care, a study seems like a damn fool thing to do to me. It's one thing if I've got flush cash, but if I'm going to be rejecting the number of slots that I provide, it's hard for me to justify spending $1 million to study something. Help me with that.
The funding source being discussed is federal funds that would support the Early Learning Advisory Council that the administration has just appointed. They're one-time funds, time-limited, and the federal government has directed the Advisory Council to use them for time-limited items that would support, enhance, and develop quality initiatives. One of the requirements for several of the federal grants is to have a comprehensive data system that can track young children. So this would put California in a position to lay the foundation to develop that system and also be eligible for additional federal dollars.
Okay, I mean, and I guess I'm looking at a budget that proposes to tell people that we're not even going to provide child care, and now I'm going to spend $1 million to study how to provide child care. I mean, if it is that I can't use the money to help actual kids, I get that. The other concern I have that's unrelated, and I want to raise it and follow up with you later on, we require too much square footage in our licensed facilities. We're one of the few states that does it. It's stupid that we do. Most states don't. In urban areas like I represent, I could take a child to a one-bedroom apartment on a second floor in an unlicensed facility and provide child care. But if I take him to a licensed facility, I got to have 40-something square feet. So, I mean, my concern is that in my district, for example, in many parts, the licensed people go begging for space, and many of the child care slots are provided by people in unlicensed one-bedroom apartments where they can stick 5 or 6 kids in a 15 by 15 square foot apartment living room. That just seems ass backwards to me. The child is clearly no safer in that space, and we're driving the children away from licensed care where they would get professional care provided. I mean, it's not a budget item, but since I see child care, it just raised that red flag to me.
Well, we certainly appreciate your comments. A great deal of the work that both the Early Learning Quality Improvement System is currently doing is to look at quality issues, including community care licensing, and certainly the Early Learning Advisory Council, with its broad parameters to look at the entire system of early care and education, will be looking at those things. Are there specific questions you would like to?
See, the concern I have is if I go into some of my communities, land is expensive. So if Ward AME Church wanted to provide child care, they've got to have 35 or 40-something square feet per child. If Mrs. Smith wanted to provide it on 103rd and Compton, she doesn't. Ward would have a licensed provider. Mrs. Smith ain't. Ward would provide all of the things that go with a licensed facility. Mrs. Smith won't. I'm just saying, at the end of the day, the regulation prevents what I think could be a better quality of care for the child in the name of an abstract requirement for space that New York City doesn't have and other large urban centers don't have. So we disadvantage the kids by forcing them into often substandard care in an unlicensed facility unnecessarily.
Having heard your comments, just to let you know that in some of the conversations that we currently have as we're looking at quality, we are also looking at regulations that surround that and are having conversations with community care licensing to say we really need to look at the regulations and look at that package and update them, taking into consideration what currently is being said and what we need to do. So this piece of advice would certainly fit into those conversations.
I mean, I'll follow back up with you. I mean, again, in my area, I have a number of churches that could provide far more adequate care than is currently being provided in private residences, in large part because the regulations that were promulgated by your department preclude many of those churches from being able to provide the care. And it would be safer, it would have more space. I mean, we require that they have, I think it's 45 or some square feet of outside space. I mean, again, I've got people doing it in an apartment when they ain't got none. So, I mean, I've got churches with parking lots where they could do it and there's no one in the parking lot during the day, so there's no safety issue. But we force to the unlicensed one-bedroom or two-bedroom apartment provider rather than having a licensed facility that we could use. And in some cases, the difference might be a few feet. Now, I recognize that some of the churches can apply for a waiver, and sometimes they get it and sometimes they don't, but that just serves as a barrier for many of them being able to just apply and provide what would be a much better quality of care. I'll follow up with you later, and I didn't mean to take this much time of the committee, but if you're saying in number one, though, that we can only use this money for study, then I mean, I guess that's it, but it's hard for me to study something when I'm telling kids and mothers that I don't have any money for their child care. The study just seems ass backwards to me.
And I don't want to imply that it can only be used for studies per se, but it's dedicated to like one-time expenditures, something that you do that can build on something. So,
how many kids could I provide daycare for $1 million?
depending on.
I mean, I got women who work in the city of Inglewood, and this probably is how they get their child care done. And I'm going to do a study and tell her that she's going to lose her child care.
Madam Chair, I think the other issue is that I think the federal funds that are being discussed are funds we haven't even gotten yet. These are this is an idea that the feds have been talking about, sending states funding through the ELAC committees to work on quality. So you may want to consider waiting until we receive the federal grant and understand what the parameters are around what your options are for using the funding.
That would make me feel
and at
better,
that
Madam
point, you
Chair.
can weigh whether this is a higher priority or not. Deciding what the highest priority is before the funds come through may
If
be
I could
premature.
potentially do 131, that's what I understand from staff. If I could do 131 kids for a year versus a study, I mean, that's a simple call for me.
But I'm not so sure the money can be used for that.
I'm not either. That's okay.
The money wouldn't be used for access. The money is to be used on quality activities that the Early Learning Advisory, the ELAC, will approve. And you have to send in your plan as to what you're going to do with your funding before you receive the funding.
Well, LAO, can we get the full parameters of what is available from the money for the... I'm sorry, my tongue doesn't want to work today. Could we get the parameters of what the money can be used for? Again, if all we can use it for is the study, then it is what it is. But if there are other options, I'd like to know that before I just engage in the study.
Sure, we'll work with the department. And again, I think this is still happening at the federal level. They haven't even sent it to us yet, but
it's part of the ARA funding.
Right.
The money has to be out by the end of September. So they're looking for everyone to have all states to have their applications in by August 1st. The money it's not a competitive grant. The money is there for us to tap. We do have to have an approved by the ELAC plan to send in. I'm glad to send you the draft, what the ELAC will be looking at and considering on June 2nd. Glad to send you what we have there. You can see what they're looking at as far as considering.
What would help me, it would be just if you said, these are the 8 things you can spend the money for. I mean, and it might be that I agree with you that the study is the best thing, but, you know, in kind of like absent knowing what the range of things I could spend it for are, you know, and knowing that I'm going to have a shortage of slots available, it's just hard for me to do a study under those circumstances.
Okay, so Senator Huff, do you have any comments or? Nope. Okay. Well, Senator Wright, what is your pleasure?
I'd like to get the information from the LAO to make a more informed decision.
Okay, we'll just hold. Then we will hold this item open, and it may appear tomorrow during the budget committee as a whole.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I just did.
All right. Let's move on to item 15. Let's try this again. The CSAC Ed Fund detangling. We started this last week. We'll come back to it at the end of the... Okay. All right. LAO?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Judy Hyman, Legislative Analyst's Office. Your staff recommendations are on page 21 of your agenda. And we agree with items 2, 3, and 4 on that staff recommendation. That includes funding 1 additional position for information technology. That would include information security, firewalls, network maintenance, some operating system support, and other functions that we believe are not sufficiently covered by the positions the governor recommended. It also includes some equipment and software that will be required and a security system for the facility. We are not recommending an augmentation for the Fund Your Future publication. It's possible that EdFund or its successor will continue to publish this document, or other alternatives may be available. And if not, this could wait until the next session to fund the next round of publication. It would require a slightly shortened production schedule, but it would be possible to make this decision once we have more information.
Okay. Department of Finance?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ian Johnson, Department of Finance. As the LAO pointed out, your staff recommendations add what's essentially an increase of about $500,000 general fund to what I testified to last time here, which was the $676,000. We are not prepared to support the additional costs that are above and beyond our recommendation. Again, the $280,000 for the Fund Your Future publication. We've received no specifics from the Student Aid Commission confirming that their level of utilization of this publication will incur $280,000 in costs. We've recently been informed by EdFund that EdFund itself spends around $300,000 to publicize 1.5 million Fund Your Future copies nationwide, 1 million of which are for just California. They've also informed us that, according to their records in 2008-9, the Student Aid Commission's only used 22,000 Fund Your Future publications for their outreach, their CalSOAP outreach efforts. So again, with so many uncertainties and without cost justification from the Student Aid Commission, we can't support this level of funding for this publication.
Okay. Yes.
Yes. Janet McDuffie with the California Student Aid Commission. I appreciate the staff's additional resources. We do feel they are critical for our future operations. However, disagree with the Fund Your Future publication to not fund that. I'm not sure where the $22,000 came from, but we submit these, print these for every high school in the state and every college. There are a number of publications that go out specifically through our Cash for College, but there are thousands others, hundreds of thousands that go out through ongoing orders. So looking at just one piece of that is a little bit misleading in terms of the numbers that are published. The timing of this is could lead to maybe having a smaller amount for the current year and then a large amount in the subsequent budget year, given the timing of when you do the design and graphics for the publication versus the actual printing. It crosses over a bit between two fiscal years in terms of that timing. But the way this whole additional funding works is that Department of Finance will have to approve when the funds are used. So it'd be helpful to have the funds there so that when they'll be available when they're needed.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
We also have copies of their Fund Your Future. We do various publications both in English and Spanish, and they are the cornerstone publication for our Cal Grants and other programs. And they become so valuable that EdFund, as Department of Finance mentioned, uses these nationwide. But they were a publication that the Commission started before EdFund even existed.
Okay. Staff has recommended thought about the Fund for Your Future as at $280,000 as a one-time for the current year, for the this budget year, and that you come back every year to continue to ask for those funds as opposed to just being ongoing. Is that right? Yep. And then go along with the LAO suggestions of $106,000 for additional one PY for IT and $60,000 for equipment and software and $32,000 for security systems and video surveillance. Is there any comment or?
Are you going to do them all as one vote? Or?
Yeah, we'll do. Okay. Yeah, well.
Depends how you do it. I can support 2 and 3. I'm going to be no on the rest of them. So if you do an up down, I'll just be no on all. So it's your. Well,
we want your support on some things. Okay, so why don't we'll split this, and so you're okay with items?
I'm actually talking about this part. Down
okay.
Do you want me to call them out individually? I can do that.
Okay, we'll just call them out individually.
We're gonna do the items individually. Item number 1: approve $1,154,000, of which $280,000 would be one-time funds. Lou?
Aye.
Huff?
No.
Wright?
Aye.
Items 2 and 3 approve the $550,000 reappropriation and the budget bill language that goes with that. Lou?
Aye.
Huff?
Aye.
Wright?
Aye.
Item 4, reject the governor's budget bill language. And then item 5, approve the staff recommended budget bill language instead. Lou?
Aye.
Huff?
No.
Wright?
Aye.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Okay. Let's do item 16, student academic preparations, University of California, CSU, LAO, and Department of Finance. Outreach programs. LAO.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In recent years, the budget bill language has included provisions protecting the amount of funding that needs to be spent on academic preparation and outreach programs at UC and CSU. In the proposed budget, this language is missing. Your staff has recommended restoring the language, listing the amounts, and listing a requirement preventing disproportionate cuts to this funding. We have a suggestion for a slight adjustment to this language, and that is to omit the first paragraph, which lists the budget amounts. Those are the budget amounts prior to the current fiscal year. Because the segments were permitted to make some reductions this year as long as they were not disproportionate, those are no longer the current funding amounts. So listing those amounts could cause some confusion. We recommend using only the second paragraph in the proposed language and then making a decision about which year you'd like to reference in that language. If you reference the 2007-8 year as currently listed, that would permit reductions. If that language were in place this year, for example, that would permit reductions of up to 20%, because that's the extent of general fund reduction since then. If you wanted to prevent any further reductions from the current year level, you could change that reference to the 2009-10 year. And then as long as the general fund appropriation for the segments doesn't fall below the current year level, they would not be able to make reductions to the outreach programs.
Okay. University of California?
Thank you, Madam Chair. We're fine with the analyst's recommendation. We think it makes sense. It gives us the flexibility that we need, but doesn't tie it to the specific dollar amounts that were referenced in the paragraph above.
Okay. Department of Finance?
Good afternoon. Molly Quasaworth, Department of Finance. Similar to LAO, we would just like to note that UC has reduced its academic outreach programs in the current year. And so under the proposed BBL, they could actually have to spend more in budget year than they're spending in current year, depending on how much funding they end up getting in the budget year. And again, we just like to state our position that we don't approve of stating a specific amount and leaving it to UC and CSU to kind of prioritize their needs.
Okay. Any comment from members? I think here in this recommendation that we're going to put before a vote for members is that to take the staff's recommendation that the subcommittee approve the budget bill language as presented on page 24.
Madam Chair, if you're going to do that, then can I work with your staff on the corrected dollar amounts as noted by the analyst, because these are dollar amounts from prior years, so I'd be happy to work with you to correct those dollar amounts. Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments, concerns? All right, let's have the vote.
Lou?
Aye.
Huff?
No.
Wright?
Aye.
Okay, item 17, lease revenue bond funded capital outlay projects. LAO, UC, CSU, Department of Finance. Okay, the governor's budget. Should we start with the governor or the LAO?
Sure. Mark Whitaker, Legislative Analyst Office. As you heard last week, the governor's capital outlay proposal included 12 projects that would be funded with lease revenue bonds, totaling about $419 million in bond authorizations in 2010-11, and then finishing those projects would require an additional about $196 million in later years. our office is recommending downsizing the governor's proposal to only include life safety projects, essentially seismic projects. The staff recommendation at the bottom of page 27 takes a similar approach. It's slightly different than our recommendation in that it includes 2 projects that we do not consider high priority seismic life safety projects. We would remove the CSU San Diego Storm Nassiter Hall renovation. Only a small portion of that renovation is seismic. The project does not appear on CSU's seismic priority list, so we would consider it one of the projects to be removed. And then also the UC Santa Barbara Davidson Library seismic project was not included on our list, similar to the CSU San Diego project. This project would include a small seismic component, but the majority of the project is adding on new space to the library, which we don't consider a priority in this budget environment. So, other than we would recommend removing those 2 projects and just approving the 4 as a way of reducing, adding more debt and debt service obligations to the state.
Thank you. Let's go to CSU. Want to comment on the projects?
Thank you. Vice San Juan, Cal State University, Capital Planning, Design, and Construction. The staff recommendation is appreciated in including our 3 projects. There are 3 additional projects that we're proposing to be funded from general obligation bonds that are remaining from prior approvals by the legislature and the voters. We think that approving those 3 projects, the Fresno Faculty Office Lab Project, Channel Islands West Hall, and the Chico Taylor Replacement Project, provides the legislature the opportunity to approve lease revenue bonds next year should you feel it's appropriate based on the debt, and those projects would be shovel ready. It would put us in the best position to add 1,400 jobs to stimulate the economy on top of the ones identified that in the 3 projects that is recommended by staff. It would be 945 jobs. So we do see these as the opportunity to stimulate the economy, and using existing GEO bonds, we propose to do that.
Existing GEO bonds as opposed to the lease revenue bonds?
For the remaining 3, that's correct.
For the remaining 3. Okay, so LAO has said to you that their recommendation is not to do the CSU San Diego project because it's not seismic ready or not seismic important priority. Any comment about that?
The building, when it is renovated, will include improvements to its seismic structure. Shear walls will be added. There are also fire life safety issues where the corridor is not a 1-hour corridor in the exiting corridor. That's similar to the Chico condition. So there are fire life safety issues in those projects which would be remedied by the renovation at San Diego and a replacement building at Chico. So as much as it is not a level 5 or 6, I would have to confirm if it shows up as a level 4 from a DSA perspective. But we, on our website, do only track level 5s and 6 from DSA's point of view.
And that didn't rise to that level. So that was his recommendation to delete the project for now.
That's right. That project was previously approved, so we are completed with working drawings and ready to go to construction. So we could be under construction in a few months.
Okay. All right. Then UC's projects.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Patrick Lenz for the University of California. We support the entire list here. We're particularly concerned that what was omitted was the UC Merced Science and Engineering 2 building, recognizing that it is a new construction. It's also a new campus. We're trying to grow that campus to a level of sustainability at about 6,500 students. We're at about 3,700 now. We need the facilities in order to be able to put the students somewhere when they come to campus. And so we would encourage you to improve that project. We are supportive of the UC Santa Barbara project for many of the similar reasons that CSU testified on their project. And then one other that I would note is the UC San Diego Research Support Facility. This is a small amount of money, $613,000 out of GO bonds, only $5.5 million out of lease revenue bonds. This is a 1940s structure that is so outdated that they really feel like they're going to jeopardize some of the availability of obtaining federal research support if they don't get this correction. And again, it's not a large amount of money.
It's all relative today.
Yes, I understand that, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Any comment from Department of Finance?
Stan Hugh, Department of Finance. We appreciate the staff recommendation for approval of the life safety projects, but at this juncture, we're still recommending approval of the full complement of projects as proposed in the April letter for those reasons cited, also by UC and CSU. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Huff.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For Finance, why are we doing this with lease revenue bonds as opposed to just going to the voters and doing general obligation bonds?
Well, we've tried. I think 2006 had been our last successful GO bond approval, and at this juncture, the administration doesn't have a proposal for additional GO bonds through that mechanism.
Yeah, I'm just struggling with this because I think because of the size that it's something that really ought to go to the voters. I recognize the need. I'd like to do the lease revenue. That's putting another, almost $500 million
right.
Exactly on pressure on the general fund and more debt. You've already got a significant amount of debt with the higher ed. So it's still a coin toss for me, but I'd certainly feel a lot more comfortable if we were doing the GO route.
How many jobs would be created out of these 12 projects?
We're looking at over 5,600 jobs between the two systems, Madam Chair.
5,600, okay.
And those are just the jobs that are directly associated with the capital construction projects. It doesn't recognize the ripple effect for vendors supplying equipment or other jobs that would be created that are not jobs directly associated with construction.
Well, anybody have any pleasure on these recommendations, a staff recommendation or the governor's recommendations for these projects?
I just say I appreciate staff paring it down some. I think that's a good move in the right direction, all things considered. I don't know. We'll see how you guys move on this. I still don't know.
Okay, all right. All right. The recommendation is to concur with staff's recommendations. Let's call the roll.
Lou?
Aye.
Huff? Right?
Aye.
That's Huff, aye. Right?
Aye.
Okay, so we did half the list. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, redistricting data at UC Berkeley. What is this about?
This is a staff introduced item.
I know.
This is the last
Okay, I got this. All right. Mr. Lenz?
Your call, Madam Chair. It's my understanding that, my limited understanding, by the way, that this funding is needed to support the requirements under Proposition 11. I don't have a lot of information. I spent some time on Friday trying to gain a little bit more information to see whether or not these were one-time funds, ongoing funds. And I have to apologize that I don't have much more information than what's before you.
Okay. I understand that the university does this work in anticipation of the census data, et cetera?
That is correct. Historically, we have done that. It's been an augmentation rather than a redirection to the university's budget. Last year, the legislature redirected about $150,000 on a one-time basis to begin some of this work, and that's the extent of my knowledge on this issue.
All right. Any comment from LAO?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Steve Boyletter with the analyst. We talked about this a little bit last week. I guess I would just reiterate that the Prop 11 does require that mapping information be available for redistricting. It doesn't actually require this particular appropriation. It doesn't require that it be UC. But that ostensibly the reason is to connect to that effort, as you note. I would point out that the Institute currently does have this kind of information available online. They have an ongoing presence that maintains the system. So I think the question is how much additional resources would they really need, and we haven't seen any backup at all to justify these numbers.
Okay, Department of Finance.
Yes, I'd just like to add that at this time we're not prepared to support this. We just don't have enough information. As Mr. Lenz said, they got $150,000 one time last year, and it's really unclear why they need $600,000 this year.
Was this a request from the university?
No, Madam Chair, it is not.
Okay, thank you. The $150,000 was a one-time last year?
That's correct.
Okay. The staff is recommending that we redirect funds for this to University of California and as a one-time effort.
Sure.
Okay. Staff recommendation. So.
I'll move it. Against all odds, huh?
Against all odds. Okay.
All right. Lou?
Aye.
Huff?
Aye.
Wright?
Aye.
That's one time.
One time. Boy, that was easy. Okay.
Patrick's shaking his head.
Right. Medical education, item 19. This is for UC Riverside.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Regents did make a request of $10 million. This is the second year in a row we've made this request for the startup of medical school at UC Riverside. We've been the Riverside campus has done its due diligence in working with the county, in working with private donors. Kaiser has indicated that they would provide, for instance, $10 million in matching funds. But this really represents startup cost. There is recognition that in the Inland Valley we need a lot more physicians. There is a program already at Riverside where 24 students participate in a joint program with Riverside and UCLA. But this certainly would be the startup of a medical school that was supported by the Regents, supported by CPAC. The only concern I have here, it's a redirection of $15 million. And given the magnitude of the budget reductions, $15 million is a sizable redirection for purposes of starting up this medical school. So I raise concerns about that being a redirection rather than an augmentation, Madam Chair.
Appreciate that. Any comment from members?
I'll make a.
Sure.
I think this is very important in an underserved area, and it's one of those things that's pretty hard to retreat from where they have started, and whether it's the tail wagging the dog or whatever, I feel we do need to continue on down this path, so I'm prepared to support it.
Thank you. LAO, do you have any comment?
I would just echo some of what Mr. Lynn said, and in our analysis, we did question the medical school as the most efficient way to meet the healthcare needs of the state and the Inland Empire, that there might be more cost-effective ways. And then on top of that, we just have real concerns about contributing funds to a new program at UC when, as we've heard in previous hearings, the state is not fully funding the university's core operations, including existing programs in medical education that would have the same mission and goals as the new medical school, like the PRIME program, which is supposed to train doctors to serve in underserved areas. That has not received an augmentation since 2007-8 for its enrollment growth. And additionally, this $15 million would just be the first installment of the startup cost for the medical school. They estimate the startup cost of approximately $100 million on top of the enrollment funding they would need once the school opens in 2012, plus the large capital outlay needs of the school, which they estimate close to being $500 million, which even with generous approval by the voters of more general obligation bonds, it's unclear how the university would have enough capital outlay dollars to fund the medical school and all of their other capital outlay needs at the 10 campuses. And the staff does include recommendation that any dollars available through the federal government should supplant the general fund costs, and that certainly makes sense, but we'd also just recognize the limitation of federal funds, that they could be one-time or whatnot, and the state would be entering into a long-term obligation in this medical school.
Okay.
Senator
Wright, do you have any comment on this?
Nope.
Okay. Senator Huff, you want to make a motion? Or
I'll move this item.
Okay.
Staff's recommendation.
Lou?
Aye.
Huff?
Aye.
Wright?
Aye.
Okay. Let's go to item 20, Nursing Initiative, UC, community colleges.
Since we're not doing the budget bill language, we can just jump to the record and approve the letters, but not do the budget bill language. It's a very long item. We already talked about it, unless you want to put a revisitation up there.
No, I think because we are only going to do this approve of the finance letters as opposed to the recommendation from the staff, and just let you know that this is a topic that we will need to get a better handle on in terms of needs and accountability in terms of, because over the last several years we put a lot of money into the nursing initiative, and we don't quite know where we stand with any of the segments in terms of productivity. But I think the staff recommendation is too complicated here, because I don't think CPAC is able to perform the functions defined, since we've never looked at your capacity. So I think the easiest thing for us to do here is just approve the April letters, and if either segment would like to comment on the progress that you have made in this particular area, nursing initiatives, we'd be happy to hear from you. But with that, I think on page 31. Let's see. Page 33. Okay, page 33. Is this one here?
The governor's proposals are really long. The governor's proposals start on page
32. 31. Right.
Would approve all of those nursing initiative proposals from the governor.
Okay, so the issue is that we're going to approve the governor's May revise on this proposal from page 31.
And finance letter.
And the April finance letter up to staff comment on page 33. Is there any comments? Please not to do that.
We're good, ma'am.
You're good.
We're good.
Community colleges, you okay? Okay. Thank you. Let's do this page 31, top page 31 up to before the staff comment on page 33.
So to be clear, the motion was the governor's proposals for April finance letters and May revise on the nursing issues. Lou?
Aye.
Huff?
Aye.
Wright?
Aye.
But just let you know that we will come back. I mean, we need to know what's going on, but not today. Okay, item 21, community colleges basic skills.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yeah, thank you.
Did you want to do public comment after the item or
Yeah.
at the end?
Oh, no, at the end. We're too far down the road. Okay, all right. Okay, well, if they want to come up forward, that's fine.
After the segment.
Okay, let's start with the community colleges here. Or no, let's do the LAO. Basic skills. Give us some background here.
Paul Steenhausen with the Legislative Analyst's Office. As we've discussed in a previous hearing, students typically come to the community colleges unprepared for college-level work. And there are generally low completion rates for these underprepared students once they actually enroll in the community college. So the state supports basic skills education largely through apportionments, the general purpose monies, which are used for classroom activities and tutoring and that sort of thing. In the last few years, there's been a basic skills initiative, so pot of money, supplemental money that the colleges can use for purposes counseling, enhanced tutoring, mentoring, faculty development, that sort of thing. And the money is largely allocated on a formula basis based on enrollment, full-time equivalent students. Staff recommendation here is to change the allocation so it's based on the full-time equivalent students, but also outcomes.
Okay. Community colleges.
Good afternoon. I'm Eric Skinner with the California Community Colleges. In terms of the proposal that's on the table here, we are just seeing it for the first time today, and so we're in the process of analyzing it, trying to figure out what the implications of it are. So we don't have a position at this time. I would note that the basic skills funding, it's about $20 million, as the agenda points out. That's been cut back significantly from the $31 million it was the year before, so it's about a 39% reduction. And those funds provide an important function on our local campuses to allow our districts to improve their basic skills instruction, and they focus on professional development. They focus on research and program evaluation to see what's working on their campus with their students, so they can figure out what to expand. And then lastly, it provides for planning time, coordination time, so the faculty can develop these programs and build them out and reinvent them to serve students. So that's the concern that out of the gate is raised for us, is that it would redirect dollars from this high priority, high value program. That said, this notion of using the funds as a fiscal incentive, we're willing to. We're going back and trying to evaluate the implications of that, and we'd be happy to provide comment. But
okay.
we don't have a position today.
Okay. Department of Finance?
Yes, Ed Hansen, Department of Finance. Similar to the Chancellor's office, this is the first that we've seen of the language, so we're not prepared to support it at this time. We'll need additional time to get a better understanding of how it would be implemented and what the ramifications are. And just as a further note, that it seems to be carving money out and creating additional steps in order to get this money, which is conflicting with the administration's overall proposal to increasing flexibility to allow districts to use money to meet their priorities.
Okay. Any comment from staff? I think, Mr. Senator Wright?
I was going to say, Mr. McCallum, did you have some comments on this issue?
I think public comment.
Is that
okay, do we have folks in the audience who want to make public comments on this particular issue?
Not just
Not just, okay. Let's see, we just started a run here.
Okay.
Okay.
I didn't know the other
Well, we do.
Just him.
That's okay. Why don't you just fill a seat here, and we'll just take some public comments on this particular issue.
I'm Patrick McCallum. I'm representing a number of community college districts, the large community college districts in the state. We also have with us Chancellor Roe Darnell from Yosemite District in the audience, who's the incoming president and CEO board. We're opposed to this current proposal. We met with Senator Liu earlier this morning. We're in support of what the intent of it, which is to do a better job with our basic skills students. The question is how you do it. We have cut, as you all know, $530 million from the current year budget. We've also deferred $700 million. The cuts that have been made mostly have been in support staff, helping students that need it the most. So it's going to be kind of difficult. So our position is this fund has already been cut by 39%. Districts have already started using the funds for professional development and tutoring and whatnot. We need to measure it. If new resources are able to come in, which is a difficult time, then we may want to talk about, like this fund, targeting those resources with incentives towards students with best practices, whether what we call accelerated learning, we speed up the learning, whether it's contextualized learning, where you're doing CTE classes with basic skills classes, those kinds of things are best practices that we know. But to take from a budget that's $530 million down and to redirect that money in an incentive basis essentially would direct resources from those that generally have the most challenging students, and those are some in rural, some in urban districts, and generally direct those resources now, because it generally works in the same way that the legislation is being proposed. So with that, we would prefer opposing this language and with new resources looking at some other ideas.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members. Jonathan Lightman on behalf of the Faculty Association of California Community Colleges. We, too, don't have an official position on this, but I would imagine that we would likely be in opposition. And for many of the reasons stated, I do want to emphasize that so many of the basic skills students do depend on programs like EOPS that have been cut substantially. And so the question is if we were looking at some kind of rewards basis or incentive basis, that we would want to restore funding to those very critical and very successful programs. On the issue of the basic skills, I think it should be noted that this pot of money began as a state priority. And it dovetailed very nicely to a strategic plan that was approved by the Board of Governors, where we took a look at what was lacking in the system, and that was a better delivery model for basic skills education. The kind of research that has been developed has actually been very well received by the faculty, as well as the provision for professional development activity in basic skills. I know ourselves that we have offered basic skills workshops that have been very well subscribed, that the faculty say they really do benefit, and they're able to translate that to their campuses. And so the caution that I would urge is you have a pot of money, albeit that's been cut, but that has some proven results. And then we're taking it down a little bit further to say that we want to begin incentivizing that's really largely unproven. And in this era where we're trying to hold the whole ship of state together as best as we can, this may not be the opportune time. I think that the suggestion that Mr. McCallan had proffered to you is one that's worthy of your consideration. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair. Reed Milburn, President of the Student Senate for California Community Colleges. The Student Senate also does not have an official position on this, but we are concerned that it would potentially hurt some of our more vulnerable students. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members. Joshua Golka with the California School Employees Association. We also share the concerns that have been expressed by the previous speakers. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, any comment from staff? I think the recommendation is to adopt the budget bill language on page 36, and with the knowledge that this is the first hit on this particular subject matter, that it will come up again during conference committee, because I'm sure the Assembly has not seen this, and so it's a subject matter that stakeholders will have another opportunity to address this language in detail. So with that, there's a recommendation to adopt the staff's language. Thank you.
Liu.
Aye.
Huff.
Aye.
Wright.
No.
Okay. Item 22, bug waivers and FESA. Mr. Steinhausen. Steenhausen. Sorry.
As you've also heard in previous hearings, California community college students' participation in federal financial aid programs are below the national average. Because of that, community college students here in the state are missing out on hundreds of millions of dollars in Pell Grants. This money could help reduce the time that students spend working and increase the time they have to spend on schoolwork. Currently, colleges get financial aid categorical money based in large part on the workload of Board of Governors fee waiver recipients. That's a state program. It provides a waiver of their fees, but it doesn't give them any cash grants, unlike the federal Pell Grant system. There's budget bill language here staff recommends that would change the allocation of a large chunk of this financial aid administration money to be based on federal Pell Grant participation by students rather than just the Board of Governors fee waiver program. Looks like the purpose is to create an incentive for colleges to increase the number of students filling out their FAFSA, their application form to get a Pell, rather than just the application to get a Board of Governors fee waiver.
Well, similar to the last proposal, this is the first we're seeing it today, and so we haven't had a chance to analyze it. We've staff back at the office are trying to run the numbers a little bit to see how this would work out. It would clearly, I mean, the change here is weighting the funding based on BOG participation and shifting it over to Pell Grant participation, and so that's likely to cause some shifts of funding across the districts. So some districts would likely gain from this and some would lose. And in addition, it would put the fiscal incentive in a different place going forward. Those are the moving pieces on this proposal. So we could provide that list of kind of some simulations of how this would work out, but they're not complete at this point in time.
Okay, well, I think we'll get some time to do that when it goes to conference committee in another week or so.
Okay. And then in closing, I just say, we've discussed this issue
Right.
at earlier hearings, and we're definitely supportive of the idea of increasing participation in all financial aid programs, including the BOG.
Right. Thank you.
Why would a college lose money?
It would be because we're talking about a fixed pot of funds here, roughly, it's the $40 million that's in play. And what the issue is if the distribution of Pell recipients is different than the distribution of BOG grant recipients, that would shift the money around. So, for instance, if currently it's allocated more in BOGs, say there's another district and they have heavy Pell Grant participation and low BOG participation, then that district would benefit from this change in formula. Conversely, if a district had high BOG and low Pell, that would be the converse. So it's introducing it's a new data element, and it's just the reality is that districts, what we're seeing just based on looking at the numbers today, is that participation in BOG and Pell it's not equally mirrored in districts. So and that has to do with some of the local demographics and other factors. We're just starting to try to peel that back, and we'll have some more information to share with you as this progresses.
I just like to. I don't admittedly know enough about how they differ. I just thought it was a different funding source, and I didn't realize that it changed the dynamics of the funding itself. I mean, student comes in, either he pays it out of his pocket or he goes on one of many grant proposals or loan deals. So, yeah, I'd like to see the differential in terms of the funding, depending on how the students shift from a BOG to the other programs.
Pell Grants or whatever.
Or Pels or the FISLs or whatever else you had going on.
Absolutely, and we'll provide that. And just to be clear, my comments were really aimed at talking about the money that will go to the college to support the financial aid counseling is really what most of these dollars are used for. From the individual student basis, that individual student benefits, whether it's a Pell or a BOG waiver, that individual student benefits for both of those. This is talking about moving $34 million around that will go to support the colleges in providing financial aid counseling and
the financial aid office. Then.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
Okay, I got you.
Department of Finance.
Yes, just quickly, Madam. similar to everybody else, first we've seen of the language. We can't support it at this time. We'd certainly be interested in seeing the data that the Chancellor's office comes up with.
Thank you. Okay. Senator Huff?
Okay. For the LAO, was this language change diminish our ability to use the funds in Schedule 5 to pay mandate claims?
I'm sorry.
Does this language change? Does it diminish our ability to use the funds in Schedule 5 to pay mandate claims?
No.
Okay, so there's no mandate effect there.
No.
Okay.
I agree.
I don't believe so at this time, but that would certainly be one of the things that we have to go back and look at.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll get another shot at this too. So, staff is recommending that the subcommittee adopt the budget bill language on page 37 and 38.
I'll move it.
Okay. Let's call the roll.
Blue?
Aye.
Huff?
Aye.
Wright?
Aye.
Okay, and then item 23, Career Tech Ed Pathways Initiative, LAO, community colleges, UCs, and Department of Finance.
Department of Education.
Department of Education. Okay. LAO?
The governor's proposed to remove the Career Technical Education Pathways Initiative from the flex item, both in the current year and budget year. As you might recall, this CTE Pathways Initiative provides, by and large, supplemental money to K-12 and community colleges to increase the alignment and coordination between the two systems. As you can see on page 39 of your agenda, the governor proposes a total of $68 million for the Pathways Initiative in 2010-11. It would come from two funding sources. First, Proposition 98, that's $20 million, and the governor would essentially pay for that by taking $10 million each from the Extended Opportunity Program and Services categorical, as well as the part-time faculty compensation categorical. In addition, the governor's proposed $48 million in non-Proposition 98 money from this from the Quality Education Investment Act, so a total of $68 million total for that program in the budget year.
Okay. Community colleges? Any comment?
Well, again, I think we've covered this at an earlier hearing,
Right.
but just to quickly summarize then, we are supportive of keeping the SB 70 career tech dollars out of the flexibility item.
Okay.
We're listening to the legislature and the governor when they say we should be focusing on CT, transfer, and basic skills, and these funds are one important source of coordinating and kind of funding progress on that front.
Okay. Department of Ed?
Good morning, or afternoon, excuse me.
Right.
Superintendent O'Connell has been a supporter of flexibility, but not in this case. This money's original purpose was to provide improvement of CTE at both the community college and the high school level. It's intersegmental in nature. There are three kinds of programs: those at the community college that are improved by these funds, those that are improved at the high school, and those that we share in common. $15 million of this is transferred to the Department of Education annually in an interagency agreement. If this money goes in the flex pool, then there's the $15 million to support the high school programs. The mechanism isn't there. So we support keeping this item out of flex.
And opposed to the governor's proposal?
Well, we would certainly take the extra money if it was available, but
okay. All right. Okay. Department of Finance.
Yes, just to reiterate the administration's support of career technical education. The administration believes in this environment with high unemployment rate, folks are going back to the community colleges to try to enhance their skills or gain new skills. We think there's going to be continued demand for CTE, so we believe that the additional funding is appropriate. And as also noted, there is support from the Chancellor's Office and the Department of Ed to keep the CTE funding out of the flexibility. I know there's been some disagreement of whether it should be in the flexibility, but it was never the administration's intent that CTE be in the categorical flexibility.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I think there. Want to make a comment on this particular item? Behind you, Jonathan Lightman.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair and members. Very briefly, Jonathan Lightman on behalf of the Faculty Association, California Community Colleges, and on this item also on behalf of the California Community Colleges Association for Occupational Education. First, we would like to see this moved out of the flex. While we would accept the increase to the CTE pathways, we don't agree that it should be at the expense of either EOPS or the part-time faculty. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Anyone else would like to make a comment? Okay, staff has a recommendation on page 40. That is it's five. Has 5 elements to it. You want to take each one, or are you okay with all 5?
We can do 2 votes. I'm okay with the first one, and then I'm going to be not supporting the others. So
okay.
We do 2.
Why don't we do?
Unless, of course, Senator Wright has a difference down there.
Okay, why don't we just...
But all the staff recommendations don't do the flexibility, right? So number 5 takes care of that.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay, so let's...
I'm okay with the 5, Madam Chair.
You're okay with the 5. Okay, well, Senator Huff is not. So why don't we go ahead and do them individually so you can...
Is there other public comments?
Are there any other public comments on this item? No. Great. Okay, so let's do 1.
So on the first staff recommendation to approve the $48 million in QIA funds, Lou?
Aye.
Huff? Right.
Aye.
And then staff recommendations 2 through 5, Lou?
Aye.
Huff?
No.
Right?
Aye.
Okay. All right. Let's go back. Thank you. Let's go back to... since I had a little conversation with Senator Wright, to item 13, the preschool assessment. This...
Just want to make a vote, or?
Yes, this is a staff recommendation to have a quality rating system in December of 2010 and to appropriate $1 million in federal and one-time federal funds and for 3 PY for the quality rating feasibility study. So the recommendation is to spend the $1 million when and if it becomes available for the purposes of an preschool assessment.
Okay, Lou?
Aye.
Huff?
No.
Right.
Aye.
Thank you. Okay, let's have time for public comments. No public comments. Okay, great. Thank you very much. We'll see you at the full budget hearings beginning tomorrow.